Good morning. So I'm just giving a couple of more minutes in case anybody else is going to join us. If you can give me a thumbs up in the chat, let me know that you can hear me. Then hopefully we can get started shortly. Thank you, Grace. Good stuff. Thank you, Robert. Okay, while we wait, as you can see on screen, two email addresses. Currently, Miss Potts and myself, Mr. Howes, teach film studies at A-level. We're not clear yet on who is going to take on you guys for next year, but we're both looking forward to the opportunities. This year, we split the class so that Miss Potts has them a couple of times and I have them a couple of times, and it's allowed us to engage quite nicely in a number of different ways, splitting up the component 3, the coursework, which we will talk about in a short moment. Going to give it until 10:45. I think at that point we will just launch on in. Okay, so I've just shared the link so you can download this file in the chat. So you can take it away and think about it to your heart's content. Okay, so film studies at A-level. We engage in a short stop through the GCSE spec, the specification there, because we need to get you on board with the terminology that we use on film studies and use that as a springboard into the main function of teaching film studies, which is to explore the meanings. So like English, there is a lot of terminology to be used. So when you're analyzing language and literature in English, you are understanding the writer's methods. For example, the use of metaphors and symbolism and how that created meaning. And film studies is pretty much the same. We look at the symbolisms around the use of cinematography or performance or editing. And we get an understanding of the meanings that the filmmakers or the actors want to portray about what they are portraying. Miss Potts is going to go into greater depth with you on Friday in that regard. We are going to look at the overarching flow of the course. Now, there's a lot of information there. You have two assessed components, component 1 and component 2, which will end with 2 exams at the end of year 13. So on the left, we have component 1, which looks at a variety of film and filmmaking. And on the right, we have component 2, which looks at global filmmaking perspectives. We tend to start from a component 2, because you will see on section A, global film, that we have a number of non-English speaking films that are split into two groups. So we're looking at the right side, and we're looking at Group 1 European film and Group 2 outside of Europe. Now, the reason why we look at that first is that we engage with those two films based upon the basic film terminology that, as I said, you're going to engage with Miss Potts. Okay, so we use those as a starting point. Yes, it's foreign speaking, but it's still very engaging films and really exciting plots. So we engage with those on a film form level. Now, if we move back to the left, you will see that there is component 1, varieties of film and filmmaking. And section A deals with Hollywood from 1930s to 1990s. Now, this is a comparative study between the two films, Some Like It Hot and Do the Right Thing. So hopefully by now you've noticed that we do have identification of the films that we are going to do on the course, and those are highlighted in red. But we have other selections there that we can certainly rely on or move to should the whimsy take us. But at the moment, for our current Year 12s, we started with the global films Pan's Labyrinth and City of God on the right. We moved to the classic Hollywood and New Hollywood, and we're looking at films like Some Like It Hot from Billy Wilder, which upsets gender norms and gender expectations, and then Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, which upset the censors and the politicians at the time because of the possibility of inciting racial violence. Okay, so we look at those in terms of the meaning that they generate. We have then below that section B, American films since 2005. We look at the difference between mainstream and independent. And then section C, again, we look at two types of films made since 1995, and those are our British contingent. Okay, so those three sections, section A, B, and C of component 1, will all sit on one examination paper. Your component 2 on the right, as I've said, we start off with the global film, two-film study. Now, those aren't necessarily comparative, but you are analysing two films in relation to the meanings that they generate. We then look at the documentary film, Amy. We had the benefit this year of doing a Q&A with the director, Asif Kapadia, about what he was trying to achieve with that. And as I will go on to talk about, we analysed that documentary in terms of how it fits with filmmaker theory, or in terms of how it responds to digital filmmaking technologies. Section C on that paper is dealing with silent cinema, and we've picked Sunrise by F.W. Murnau, which is quite a nice approach to looking at how lifestyles change and how we present a story through the silent cinema aspect. Finally, component 2 paper deals with experimental films, looking at different film movements, and we opted for Pulp Fiction because it is a narrative joy. Okay, so there's lots of films that we cover and lots of other films that we bring in to explore those ideas. Any questions? Do pop them in the chat, please. Right. Let's look at how we break this study down. We have core film areas that we look at. There are 5 aspects of film form, which I shall highlight for you here in green. Okay, so film form gives us the terminology that we use to analyze the film texts. And those are split up into cinematography, which looks at the use of camera work and the lighting. It looks at mise en scène, which is what is in the shot. We look at editing, we look at the use of sound, and we look at the use of performance. As I've said, Miss Potts will go into greater depth. We'll do some tasks with her around film form. But also at A level, we need to use those to create meaning, and we need to use those to think about the response that the filmmaker wants of us, and any response that we have that diverges from that. And then finally, within that, every film has been created within a context. Either it is responding to some issue, or it has been created at a time when there are certain ideologies expressed. Okay, so those are our core film areas that every film needs to be explored through. On the right, you have the specialist areas of study. And so there are 6 specialist areas which refer to specific films. Okay, so you will only be looking at, for example, spectatorship in relation to certain films: narrative, ideology, auteur, critical debates, and filmmakers' theories. Here are the breakdowns of which of the specialist areas relate to which films. So component 1, if we look at the component 1 paper on the left, section A, the Hollywood films, not only does that deal with the core film areas, the meaning and response, the context, but it also looks at these films from the perspective of auteur theory, which thinks about auteurs as being creators. Section B thinks about spectatorship and ideology in relation to the mainstream and independent filmmaking. Section C looks at narrative and ideologies in relation to British films. On the right, we have the component 2 paper, and you can see that the Pan's Labyrinth and City God, which are the global films that we look at, those are only the core film areas. And that's why, again, we choose to show those at the start, to get you thinking about those film core areas and focusing on them. Section B, the documentary film, Amy, we look at the critical debates of the use of digital technology, and we look at filmmakers' theory. So how documentarians use different methods to express their story. At the bottom there, then two extra sections. Section C, the critical debates around silent cinema, and then the narrative and auteur analysis of Pulp Fiction. So let's have a look at these in more detail. When we're thinking about spectatorship, we are thinking about how the Coens, if you think about No Country for Old Men, the Coen brothers directed that. They created it from a original novel. How are they trying to make the audience think and feel in a certain way? So films are generally constructed to provide the spectator, that's you, with a particular viewing position. Most often they are aligning the spectator, you, with a specific character or a specific point of view. They want you to feel in a certain way about the things that you are watching. This in turn raises questions about how determined spectators, okay, so their intentions, the director's intentions, how determined spectators' responses to a film are, and how far spectators can and do resist the position they are given. Okay, so as an audience member, you might have a very different reaction to a film from the intended spectator reaction. You might be disgusted or angry when you're meant to be enjoying yourself. Okay, so we explore that. Why? Why might you have an alternate reaction? And why might that upset that balance of power from the director? Learners will thus consider how far spectators are passive or active in their responses to film, and how social and cultural factors, as well as the specific viewing conditions in which a film is seen, influence spectators' responses. And it's for this reason why we don't do popcorn movies like Avatar or Star Wars, okay? Those are designed to get you on board, to enjoy yourself, to leave your brain, leave your world at the door. We are interested in investigating stories through film that upset our expectations, that play with our spectator responses. Second specialist area is narrative. And you can see that we look at a 2-film study on the left, and we look at Pulp Fiction there on the right. The study of narrative, okay, is the study of plot and the study of story. It's one way of examining the story of a film and exploring how it is structured, how it's ordered. So for language papers, that's your paper 1, question 3 on the language paper in English. And it's your analysis of structure. It's thinking about dramatic irony, and it's thinking about linear or cyclical chronologies. It's thinking about episodic chronologies. It's thinking about who is the character that we're aligned with. Why is that? What do we learn from that? It's about that ordering then and why the choices are made for that. Narrative also asks the viewer to consider from whose viewpoint we're experiencing the story, whether this has an effect on what we see, hear, and experience. Ideology then comes into play, because ideology or an ideological concept involves exploring what ideas, okay? An ideology is an idea. It's an approach to thinking or an approach to belief systems. And we need to think about what ideologies are conveyed by a film, as well as those which inform it, which may, for example, reveal that a film reinforces or challenges dominant beliefs and attitudes within a society. This is most important when we're thinking about This Is England and the portrayal of the skinhead culture, but just as much in an ideological narrative sense to think about in No Country for Old Men, regarding heroes or anti-heroes, or whether there is a hero. The auteur theory. So auteur sees filmmakers as creative decision makers, those people responsible for the selection and construction process in films which experiment with narrative and film form. Learners should consider what signatures can be identified for a film as a result of a more experimental approach to the filmmaking process. And this is often important to think about what those auteurs, what those directors and creators are trying to achieve with their film. How do they express what they're trying to achieve? How do they bring to life inherent racism or sexism or the presentation of drug culture? The critical debates, we're looking at Sunrise, which is our silent film, and Amy, which are our documentary. Critical debates occur in the exploration of the opposition between the realist and the expressive cinema, which is our silent film there. Okay, so we're looking at the presentation of realism or expressionism, which we will get into great depth about. And there for the documentary, as I've said, is the significance of digital technology in film. And a second point for Amy, and you don't have to engage with Amy on both the specialist subject area of critical debates and filmmakers theories. You get 2 questions and you get to choose which one you respond to. So there is freedom to explore what interests you. But the second one for Amy is the documentary film will be explored in relation to key filmmakers from the genre. So we look at the likes of Michael Moore and Kim Longinoto, and we think about how they present their story, how they present their ideology, how much they get involved in being in front of the camera and controlling the direction of the story they want to tell. Okay, so the documentary film studied may either directly embody aspects of these theories or work in a way that strongly challenges these theories. In either case, the theories will provide a means of exploring different approaches to documentary film and filmmaking. So that is, I should go back, I should just kind of summarize that. That is the core film areas, which I've said covers all of the films. We look at the core film areas in relation to all those films. But then that is the specialist areas for each of those films. Those are the 2 exam assessed papers. There is a third component, component 3, which is coursework, and this will be run alongside the existing schemes. And the opportunities are given in a normal environment to allow you to film a small sequence or the creation of a short film screenplay. I'm only presenting you with the short film screenplay at this point because at the moment, due to COVID, we are not allowed to engage in the filmmaking processes, and we have been stuck with just doing script work. We're hoping that that gets lifted to give you the freedom, but I would recommend actually that you do engage with the screenplay because it allows you to really think about the processes and steps needed. And often our students that engage just in the production work, they're missing out a lot of the steps that originate with the creation of a screenplay. But it's going to be hopefully all up to you once we get confirmation back. So you, in a screenplay or a production, need to include one of the following aspects. Your narrative needs to include a twist or begin with an enigma. It needs to establish and develop a single character or portray a conflict between two characters. So these are guidelines for the script writing meant to help get you to think about the creation process. The length of this is a 1600 to 1800 word, 7-page, 7-minute script. And we use specific software to type these up, which manages the process of organizing the page. And that leads to 1 page of script relating to 1 minute of screen time. You also need to include digital photograph storyboard of a key section of the script, which is approximately 2 minutes of screenplay or 20 storyboard shots. And we will cover this in far more ground. What I would like to do now is I would like to move to some responses. So we're going to look at a couple of screenshots from different films that have been released in recent times. And we're going to look at meaning and response. So here's your first one. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to have a look at this and make some comments in the chat box about your response to it. What meaning do you think is being generated? What can you spot is going on in this shot? So let me put those in the chat so you have a clear sense. 1, we're looking for what is going on and the meaning. 2, we're looking at meaning, the response. Feel about it. And 3, anything that you find striking. Okay, so 3 aspects. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to put myself on mute. Okay, in the chat, please. Any thoughts and feelings? Okay, seems that everybody is a little shy today. So I'm going to direct you again to, let me get you a copy of the link again so that we're clear. In the chat box is this presentation. There are 4 images, 4 shots. Oh, hang on a minute. Thank you, Paul. Good. It's a man sitting, feeling down. Very good. He's drooped, isn't he? His shoulders are drooped. His hands are fiddling together. His face is looking down. And there is this owl, isn't there, which is behind him. This owl with its talons out, and it's suggesting it's coming in to attack. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Robert. It does make you feel that this isn't a happy scene, doesn't it? It does make you feel that this character isn't in a good place. Now, this is from the film Her, and this scene, this shot represents how trapped he feels. Here is a bird of prey. Very good. He is the focus, isn't he? We might have this giant screen with this owl, which is lighter than the rest of the scene and brings our attention to it. But that is only to serve to identify the focus on him, the importance and significance of those feelings that you've just expressed about him. And of course, it's not, you know, a mistake or a random choice that they have chosen a bird of prey for this shot, a bird of prey that is coming in clearly to get its prey. And here we have the main character played by Joaquin Phoenix in Her, who is lovelorn and lost. And we can see the isolation in this shot. He is the only one sat there. People who are walking by are not in focus in the front of the shot. They're not paying him any attention. Okay, so it's those kinds of meanings that we are expressing and getting out of this shot. It's a wonderful shot. Let's have a look at another one. This one is from Emma, the film Emma. I'm going to give you another couple of minutes. Just pop your ideas in the chat as you have them. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, there is a clear sense of isolation. Any other thoughts? Maybe you want to think about how she is, how her isolation is different from the previous shot. Yeah, there is a sense that she is thinking, isn't she? If we think about the previous shot, his lonely, dejected performance there, his isolation in the middle of a shot where there are other people, is a very different one from hers, where she is making a choice to sit up here in this window. She is choosing to isolate herself out of the way. Ah, right. So low-key lighting in this shot, which gives us that stark contrast, the darkness here. Here we have the high-key lighting from outside with the darker backlighting here. Thank you very much, Jane. Yep, there's clothing on the floor. What's the meaning it gives us, though? What's suggested by that? Has it been laid down? Is it neatly put away? How does that show that she's alone? Who might own this house, this property that she's in? It gives us depth, doesn't it? We have her in a shallow focus of the front of the shot, and the depth of the field, therefore, is quite shallow. So the discarded shawl or scarf in the middle is out of focus, and certainly the room at the back is out of focus. And that draws our attention to her and her alone. Okay, we get the set dressing here, but our shallow focus is on her sat in this windowsill. She would be in an old home, an old, they might call an old pile, but not a castle, but it would be a stately home. Now, Emma is a story about a high society girl, Emma, who gets involved in the matchmaking of her local society. Now, she is trapped, like all women of the time, in a patriarchal society. And that society is the one that determines the matchmaking. But she gets herself involved. And what we have here is a moment where she herself is lovelorn, like the character from the previous shot of her. But she is also in trouble for setting up the matchmaking of other people when it's not her place to do so. So here she is isolating herself as a result of these feelings. But unlike our previous shot, where he is almost just giving up in the middle of everything, isolated despite being in the presence of others, she is setting herself up in a windowsill out of the way. And yet we can see that she doesn't have the entire windowsill to herself. She's stuck there, pushed to the side because of a bust of the patriarchy, a representation of male dominance. Even when she wants to be on her own, separate from everybody, discarding the social norms, she is trapped by the structures of her society. Let's look at the third one. So again, same three questions. It is, isn't it? It is, and it's meant to be. Right, and think about that light, and think about that darkness. Our attention is drawn to that light. In the shot when it's pulled back, what we have in the middle there is a dark stairwell. So this face is emerging because someone or something is coming up the stairs. But we have these two orange warm light cabinets. Thank you, Grace. Yes, it's warm, it's soft. It's like the embers of a fire. But those are pushed to the side. And when the hallway stairwell light is off, we have this dark, malevolent presence that seems to be situated in the middle of the house, in the middle of the shot. And here we have the pivotal moment when the person, or who they call the ghost, emerges, coming up the stairs. It's unsettling and it's creepy. And it's emphasizing not just the contrast between the light and the dark there, but it's emphasizing the contrast within what we have in South Korean society, as emphasized throughout the world at present, which is a disconnection between the poor and the rich. And the rich can lavish their homes with all these beautiful, expensive things and light them up, but there is always this dark core. Okay, let's look at our final fourth image. Why might this be disorientating? Thank you very much. Yes. So if this was the right way up, but at this angle, we would call it a Dutch tilt. And it's emphasizing, as you've identified, that things are not quite right here. This shot actually takes place on a gimbal frame, so the camera is turning, and you've definitely identified that turning that makes the angle of the tilt disorientating is used specifically to disorientate us, the audience. Yeah, because it's emphasizing the character here in the center of the shot, who is our focus point, is upsetting the expectations of these people. Okay, so this is from the film Black Panther. It's the moment when Michael B. Jordan's character upsets the expectations of Wakandan society to take over. So we can see that in the background, we have modern, if not slightly futuristic looking towers. We have wonderfully colorful African dress, bright, rich colors there. We have stone/metal chairs, which seem very authentically African. So we get a very clear sense of where we are, the bright glass, and then in amongst it all, we have this dark character who's bringing change, unwanted, unsettling change. Okay, so that is the exploration of meaning through just a few aspects of film form, not including any of those specialist areas, not including the depth of analysis that we will be moving to. But that is your immediate reactions, your immediate responses, and those are very key starting places to the films that we're going to look at. Now, I'm going to give you some homework prep so that you can come back and talk to Miss Potts in a little bit of greater detail, pulling together your ideas and answers. If you can make sure that you download a copy of the file as per the link that I've given you, you can see that there are a number of options here. Now, these represent the starting points of exploration of shots and scenes and ideas. They're split into three aspects. The number ones deal with film form and building up meaning and genre and response. The section twos look at narrative and the messages and character roles. I wouldn't respond to any of those because we've not covered them. And the section threes in the middle, they're exploring context and theme. So I provide you with those four shots with all those questions to help you just start to think about the aspects that we are going to be discussing in film. But I would like you to work along the section ones along the top. If you don't know the answers to any of those questions, just move on. I would like you to be able to present to Miss Potts your idea on one of those shots where you explore the meaning that is created. What style or aesthetic do you feel it's exploring? Okay, so up to you entirely. Pick one of those four shots, the one that you think gives you the most to talk about, and write a paragraph analyzing the meaning and feel. Any questions? Then please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. I will give you a break now and you can go and make yourself coffee, have some lunch, and get ready for your next session. Thank you for your time. You're very welcome. Only the top row of questions. And again, only the top row of questions that you can answer. Don't spend too long on this. Just explore some of the responses and have something to say. You're welcome. Have a great day and looking forward to meeting you all.